the opponent gets to it. Another ace, 5.
It had been nearly 2 decades since his hero Arthur Ashe last won a title, when Bryan Shelton from Huntsville, Alabama exploded on the ATP tennis circuit in the early 1990s.
A tremendous touch shot from Bryan Shelton.
Bryan certainly is the most successful player that Tech has ever had on the Pro Tour. He was on there for 10 years. He won 2 tour titles. He got as high as about 50 in the world. And he's one of the best players ever to play college tennis in Georgia, whether that's from Tech or Georgia.
An African-American with great hands and a cannon-like serve proceeded to shake up the pro world with a title in 1991 and a record 40 aces in the Australian Open that same year.
I had the privilege to represent Bryan, and I'll tell you, his serve was one of the handful best serves in the world when he was serving. And he's about maybe 6'1" as opposed to Isner 6'10", so it's remarkable that he could serve that hard and that consistently.
Bryan Shelton was an All-American at Georgia Tech in the late 1980s, and his love and loyalty to the Jackets led him to coach the women there years later. From Tech, he hit the tour and reached the 4th round at Wimbledon in 1994, and eventually won 4 singles and 2 doubles titles on the Pro Tour. It was his intense drive and work ethic that impressed the others on tour at the time.
Just remember thinking, who is this guy with the huge serve, and all he's doing is coming into the net and rushing the net as much as he can. And I quickly found out who you were, and I admired the way you handled yourself professionally and how you played the game and the success you had.
Naturally, Shelton wasn't blind to the barriers he was breaking as a man of color.
I mean, you were the first black man to win a tournament since Arthur Ashe, and I think that says something.
And as soon as I met him, he reminded me of Arthur Ashe. I just figured, even as a 16-year-old, here was a great one. Here was somebody who was going to do extremely well. And Georgia Tech was the place that gave him that opportunity. I met his sisters and his mother and father, and I realized what a good, solid stock he'd come from. He represented that top-flight character, both in his schoolwork and on the tennis court.
After a very successful run as the Georgia Tech women's coach, Shelton was chosen to lead the Florida Gator men's team, an improbable jump up the coaching ladder.
He was the Georgia Tech, loved Georgia Tech. The athletic director of Florida is Jeremy Foley's quite aggressive, built a great program. He went to his women's coach and other people down there and said, I want to get the best men's tennis coach in the country to replace who he was replacing. And the women's coach at the time said to him, this is going to sound a little odd, but I would go hire a person who's now presently a women's coach. I think Bryan Shelton, he said, is the best tennis coach at the collegiate level in the United States. But I thought that was remarkable, and Foley interviewed Bryan and basically hired him on the spot.
And if I had a kid who was trying to be a tennis player, I couldn't find a better coach or a better person to help him not only become a good tennis player, but become a great person than Bryan Shelton.
Bryan Shelton, a worthy member of the Georgia Tennis Hall of Fame.